Hey, what's up YouTube? Tigz here, bringing you guys another Escape from Tarkov video. As you guys can tell by the title, it's a pretty big one. For a bit of context here, I actually stopped making these videos as I didn't really like doing them. They did get a lot of traction, but also with that traction came a lot of negativity. And the intent for these videos was to try and make Tarkov a better game and give some criticism and maybe some positive influence to the game. We've made lots of these videos over the past, and I know a lot of you guys have liked them. But in long story short, I stopped making them because I just felt like it wasn't worth the effort making these videos, regardless of how much money it made, because I just didn't want people to be upset at the things that I may say. But you know what? It's a new wipe. I'll make a video. There's new issues, so let's talk about them. So, streamers ruin Escape from Tarkov. No. You might think, how does that work? You're a streamer. Aren't you directly impacting this yourself? Well, yes, and I'll explain that in a second. But first of all, I just wanted to say before the video starts, guys, this is just my opinion. I have no malicious intent making this video. It is purely just criticism, trying to give some insight, from some perspective to people that may not understand, and hope that it may make some change in the game, as I feel like Tarkov this wipe can actually be a good wipe, regardless of how hard the changes have been. And if the devs are willing to listen, not just to me, but to everyone else, and, collectively maybe use the poll system, then maybe this will add some influence to that. I don't know. I'm just trying to help. I love Tarkov. I want to see Tarkov do better as a game. So just keep that in mind. Everyone has opinions. This is mine. I'm not trying to cause any grief to you or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you some perspective. So, let's get into the video. The issue, as you guys can tell by the title, why are streamers ruin Escape from Tarkov? So, let me just give you a bit of context to this topic. So, I was in a streamer's chat last night, Desmond, just chilling. I was watching him looking for bosses for like, I don't know. He was streaming like 10 hours. He said he's been looking for killer for like 2 days now. Which is the standard, right? Early wipe. The game's reset. You don't want people being able to farm bosses at the start of the wipe. I get it. It makes sense. But there's a lot of contradiction to this topic, and I will explain that as we go through the video. So, the average player is not going to have boss quests, 12 days into the wipe. That's true. It's only going to be streamers and hardcore grinders. So it's probably the top 1% of players that will be in this category of people that will have this quest and be frustrated while doing it. Now, there's a few issues that arise with this, right? One, the fact that the boss spawn rates are supposedly 5% spawn rate across all maps. Now, 5% isn't really that big of a number to be like, okay, well, I can find bosses maybe in 20 raids, because there's a lot of other things that will happen in those raids that will determine if you get the bosses or not. So every queue that you load a raid, you're looking at waiting like, what, 3 to 5 minutes for a raid, depending on what map you play, and sometimes it might be even longer. That's a lot of time burnt in the game. Now, exclude the fact that I'm a streamer for a second here, okay, and I will get back to this, and I will explain my perspective on this as well. You wait 5 minutes to load a raid, you finally get into the raid. You're looking for the boss doesn't spawn. What do? You head to the extract. Why? Because that's the quest that you need to progress. Now, I know, guys, streamers rush through all the content, burn themselves out, etc. But this is the kind of thing you've got to do when you're a streamer, okay? You guys wouldn't understand it because you guys play games differently to the content creators, which is fine. But that's pretty much the premise, right? You go into the raid, the boss isn't up, what do? You leave. Okay, so now we're into another 5-minute queue. We do it again, doesn't spawn. Another 5-minute queue, another 5-minute queue, and the list keeps going on and on and on, which is fine. I don't mind grinding. I don't mind the tedious parts of the game that make these moments annoying, because guess what? Those annoying moments build up to the positive moments of when you finally get what you're looking for. Makes it more fun. I understand that. But the problem arises when the queue times are so long, you've reset the raid, 10, 20 times looking for one boss. Then, got the other issue. Tarkov is riddled with cheaters. You finally get the boss that you're looking for, and what happens? You die to a cheater. Now, this is an issue across the entire player base. It's not just for streamers who play the game all day, 12 hours a day. We're going to get affected by it, but guess what? We can just go next raid. It's frustrating, sure, but we'll just go to the next raid. Now, what about John, who's got a life? He's got kids. He works really hard. He maybe gets 2 to 3 hours a day to play the game. He's looking for a boss 3 months from now, 4 months from now, and they're still at like 20% spawn rate or something. This scenario is going to happen regardless of early wipe progression, mid wipe progression, and late wipe progression, because boss spawn rates are so low. And to top this all off, bosses don't even have good loot to even argue that it's to slow progression. Because if we're talking about progression, I've got counter arguments to that exact topic. So, you might say, well, bosses can spawn keycards. Well, guess what? Those keycards you can't sell on the flea market right now, so there's no real value to them other than using them. And then on top of that, there are only 10 uses, which has driven their price down a ton. And also, their gear in itself, like the clothing that they wear, their armor, their helmets, their bullets, their magazines, their guns. In my opinion, most bosses don't have good loot. So, their difficulty and rarity doesn't really match to their value when you kill them, which is, in my opinion, another issue. And I do have a solution to this, by the way. Just an opinion. I don't think it's going to fix the game, but I will get to that later on in the video. But that is a big thing, right? They're rare, they don't have good loot, you spend a lot of time looking for them, and then when you do find them, you end up dying to a cheater. Now, I've got a few clips to back this up as well. This happened to me last night on my stream. I found Kaban twice, so I'll just pull this up real quick for you guys. Now, by the way, you know, I've played a lot of wipes, and this happens all the time. I'm used to it. It's fine. You know, I can stream the game, I can always run it back. It's whatever. It happens. But it is frustrating regardless. And, you know, if you're someone that only has 2 hours a day to play the game, you can see why people will just quit the game and move on and wait till next wipe. Now, these issues are only affecting me right now, which, by the way, is the top 1% of the player base. Via the topic of this video, how streamers are ruining the game, I'll get to as we go through the video. But look, okay, just an example here for the start of the video. This is the dude I died to last night. I kill Kaban, I get the PKP that I needed for my quest, which is the Gunsmith 24. This guy kills me 25 minutes into the raid. Is he cheating? Who knows? I personally think he was, because he was just waiting for me near my extract. But, you know, people in the comment section or even in my stream will argue that I'm just wrong and coping. That's completely fine. But, you know, it's always the classic. The dude's got a Gazelle on, no headset, really good helmet. By the way, he did shoot me like 5 times in the chest directly. 22 hours on his account, 2 KD, and he's done 72 raids already. Sure, you might say it's a bad player, but I think a lot of other people would agree that it's probably something suspicious. He ended up shooting like 5 or 6 times in the chest. He didn't hit me anywhere else. And of course, he was camping in the area that I was going to. Now, who knows? He might not have been cheating. Personally, I think he was, but it doesn't matter. This is the point that I'm trying to make. This happens a lot. And I know there'll be a lot of people in the comment section of this video that will say, Tigz, you're right, bro. When I was going for bosses last wipe, this happened to me all the time. I ended up quitting the game because bosses at 25% spawn rate even than that is rare to find them. And then when you do find them, you end up dying to cheaters, which is a reality. Why? Because the hackers farm these bosses to sell on RMT websites for the parts that the bosses have, i.e. gunsmith quests. So for example, the PKP that I got from the boss, I checked on an RMT website yesterday out of curiosity, $5. It starts to make sense, right? How it can be really frustrating. But this is an issue in all games. But anyway, here's another clip. Glorious. Most positive guy in Tarkov. He never really complains, but even in his example right here.
Did you find Sturman? No. Next raid you'll still find Sturman. I mean, bro, I don't really think I'm gonna find any bosses until they're gonna turn on the spawn chance, bro. It's stupid. Like, I've been looking for Rochelle for almost 6 days, not a single spawn.
6 days. This is a dude that plays 12 hours a day. How on earth is anyone else that doesn't stream this game for a living able to compete with this, right? Now, sure, you guys might argue it's the first 2 weeks of wipe. It doesn't matter. I get that. But guys, I got so many counterpoints to that argument. You're just gonna have to wait like later into the video. So like, okay, right now you could see this as just a streamer issue. But this issue actually persists later into the wipe, and especially like mid to late wipe, where the breaking point of the game is people finally get their boss quests and they're like, dude, I don't want to keep running raids, wasting 5-minute queue times, looking for a boss that doesn't spawn. Especially when it does spawn, you die to a rage hacker or something, right? This issue will persist regardless of the point of the wipe. And that's the problem, right? Bosses don't have good loot, they're low spawn rate, everyone gets upset when they're trying to find them, and it's a very frustrating experience all around, not just for the streamers that play the game. Now let's go back to the title a sec, okay? My complaining or yapping, whatever you want to say, is done for that segment. Back to the title. How do streamers ruin Escape from Tarkov? For example, over the years, BSG made changes to things like this with bosses. First, they nerfed the loot. Second, they nerfed the spawn rates. And then over time, every wipe that we've had, the boss spawn rates has always been lower and lower. The loot's been worse and worse. That's fine, okay? That's BSG's vision for the game, is to make everything really rare, really hard to find. I get it. It makes sense, right? Wipes last like 6 months on average. They want to slow the progression. But wait, let's contradict that change. Here is PvE mode. They're up almost every single raid. So why even bother playing the PvP mode if you're a casual player? Or someone that just likes game like Tarkov in general, when you can just hop on PvE mode, play the game, bosses spawn at a chance where it's like, they might actually spawn too much on PvE, to be honest, but that's a different issue. But at least they spawn, right? You can find them, you can get your quest done. You're not frustrated that like, oh, it's 3% spawn rate. I've got to load 20 raids to have a chance of finding them, and then when I do find them, I either die to like some bug or a cheater kills me. Just go play PvE, right? So PvE in itself contradicts all of those changes in general on the PvP mode, which isn't really good for the health of PvP and isn't really good for the health of a wipe in the long term, especially as we get to mid to late wipe. people will start to quit the game more and more because of these things. Now, this is just one issue, okay? I'm just talking about bosses here. The Glorious plays 12 hours a day. It's his job. Just like me, and just like all these other streamers that play Escape from Tarkov, right? We are like the top 1% of the players that play this game. Now, when things get changed or fixed or nerfed, who do you think BSG looks to when these changes come through? The content creators of the video game, the YouTubers, the Twitch streamers. Why? Because that's the easiest way to see what's going on in the game. I don't think BSG wants to look at Reddit or any of these other social media platforms. Why? Because they get tons of hate, which you cannot blame them. So they look to streamers and YouTubers to balance their game. If there's any some sort of bug, it'll get fixed because it's on a stream. Or if something's too overpowered, it'll get fixed because a streamer's promoting it throughout the community. And then, you know, hearsay, everyone hears about it, boom, it gets nerfed. So that's the issue, right? Is the top 1% of players, to BSG's eyes, are the influence to nerf everything, which is the problem. Because majority of the players, which is you guys, do not get the opportunity to play this much. So because we can play the game this much, we are directly impacting the changes that happen on this game without even telling the devs to do anything. Because the devs assume that streamers are the ones influencing everyone in the game to be able to speed through the progression of the game. If you follow what I'm trying to say here, I don't know if I explained that bad, but I can play 12 hours a day. I can fly through the progression no matter how much they nerf stuff. In BSG's eyes, oh, if this is possible, let's make it not possible and make it more tiresome for that person. And in turn, that affects all of the other dudes behind us, which you guys, which is the issue, right? It's ruining the game for everyone because BSG is basically looking at streamers as like, oh, this is the progression gap here. We need to nerf this because people are flying through the content, when the reality is it's just the top 1% of the players, guys. It's just streamers and maybe a few hardcore gamers that can really just sit there all day, farm and fly through quests. That's the issue. That's how the game has been ruined, because that is how the nerfs are made to this game. And that's why bosses are so low spawn rate. When I first found Tarkov, I think bosses had like a 30% spawn rate at the start of wipe. What does that do for raids? You load into a raid of Tarkov, right? It's 30% spawn rate. Every 3 raids, you'll probably see a boss. What does that do to a raid? It makes the raid have random events, which is also making the raid unique. It's adding a element of randomness to the raid, where everyone that's loaded in is like, wait, do I have this boss quest? Let's go check it out. Also, wait, we just go kill the boss anyway, because he might have good loot. Right? It's adding to this randomness effect. It's giving a bit of what's the word? Uniqueness to the raid, where it's not just, okay, load into raid, head to Crack House, loot Crack House for the meds and the intel. Then go through to Fort, loot Fort crates, boom. Then wrap to gas station, turn on power, and extract. That is like your typical raid, right? When it comes to like looting and Tarkov, it's quite scripted. Most maps have figured out now, unless you're a new player. But that's pretty much how Tarkov's been. You got your keys, load into raid, you go to the high priority areas that have usually got the good loot. You hit your keys, you get your quest items, grab a bit of money, kill some scavs, and then you leave. Bosses, in general, completely change the dynamic of a raid because of that. The problem is, people that play Tarkov early wipe don't get to experience this feeling because bosses are such a low spawn rate. And especially like mid wipe, when the bosses get buffed up a little bit, they're like 15%, dude. Like, that should have been the starting percentage of the bosses at the start of the wipe. And by that time anyway, a lot of these players will have already quit. And I know you guys in the comment section will probably agree with this. Not all of you, but I think a good portion of you guys will probably quit this game 2 to 3 months into a wipe, which isn't really healthy for the wipe cycle. But yeah, that's just the premise of this and why the title of this video is named that way. I hope some of you guys can understand that perspective, but it is true. The devs nerf stuff because of the top 1% players. And in reality, it doesn't actually stop anything because we can just keep playing. And then the people that get affected by this are you guys, and that's the problem. And that's why Tarkov is slowly getting more and more issues over time. Now, this is just one topic. We're talking about bosses, okay? There's many other things like this in the game, like loot, for example, maps and stuff like that. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. I probably explained that pretty bad, but I think most of you understand what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so let's talk to the solutions, not just complaining or yapping or whatever you guys want to say. So, my solution. The easiest thing is just buff boss spawn rates, right? Boom. Make them 20%. Once every 5 raids, you'll probably see a boss. You know, if we're looking on a matchmaking standpoint, if the average raid takes 5 minutes, which most maps do, especially if someone in your raid's got a hard drive. That's 25 minutes of matching just to see the bosses once. 25 minutes. That's a lot of time burnt looking for games. Now, I know some of you guys are like, oh, well, I get matches in 3 minutes. Well, listen, I don't. This wipe, I've been getting hella long queue times, so I'm just talking from my perspective. 25 minutes to find a boss once, you know, at 20% spawn rate, even that is kind of crazy if you think about it. How does all of the things that I've just said make sense when it comes to the contradiction side? Boss is a 5% spawn rate. Let's just hypothetically say that spawn rate to slow progression, okay? Not just for the 1%, but they just slow progression down. Well, let's talk about Arena for a second, okay? You can boot up Arena, you can run a raid on Arena, it takes 10 minutes on free-for-all, and you can make over 200k. Now, this doesn't account for the quests that you can do daily and weekly on the game that will give you Christmas balls, rubles, GP coins, which allows you to go to traders like Ref and buy best-in-slot kits early into the wipe. And then you've also got stuff like Lega medals, which I've already got 3 of, by the way, just by playing within the first week of wipe from the quests on Arena, which allows you to either sell it for 500k a piece or buy like meta items that are OP from Ref. And you can do that without having to progress any of your other traders. So not only are you getting infinite money from playing Arena, there's no limit to it, other than the fact that you can only transfer 1.5 mil, but you can still transfer the GP coins, you can still transfer the Christmas ball, the weapon crates, the item crates, the Lega medals. Those things in itself already speed up the progression of the wipe way more than a boss would in a 25% spawn rate, because the loot is just so much better and it's consistent. Arena gives you XP to your character level. So not only do you progress faster when going through your quests on the main game, you're able to unlock more quests and speed up your progression even quicker. And the requirement to get max traders is even faster because you've already got the required level. And that's all through playing Arena. Now, I don't suggest nerfing Arena, by the way. I think Arena's great. I think it's good at what it does. I think bosses just need a big change. Now, that's one contradiction to why, you know, the devs nerfing bosses are stupid and making them rare. Okay? Now, let's talk about another one. We spoke about Arena. I think you guys get where I'm going with that. Let's talk about scav running. You can scav run, right? The queue times can be long because there's so many people doing it early wipe. True. That sucks. But then you've got to understand something. You're not losing anything. You're loading into raid and you've only got something to gain, which is amazing for people, and you cannot blame people for doing that because the game is set up in a way where it's frustrating to run a PMC. Now, if we're talking from a progression standpoint, which this is what the video is about, bosses, progression. Bosses being at 5% spawn rate, being extremely rare to find, to slow progression down for the top 1% of players, when really it's just affecting everyone else but the streamers, which they've intended the nerf for, obviously, to slow progression. You can just scav run. And what happens when you scav run? You go into raid, okay? You don't lose anything other than your time in the queue screens. The more you do it, the more rep you get for your scav karma. The higher scav karma that you get, the better the loot is that you spawn with, i.e. ammunition, guns, gear, key cards, and the keys that you can spawn with. Even the grenades, for example. You get like impacts and vogs. The more you do it, the more time you invest into it, the more you get out of it. And if you wanted to speedrun scav rep, you can easily do it by just hitting cars on your PMC with a pistol. And you'll have a better time maining your scav early wipe than you would playing your PMC. Because the progression on scavving is just so much better than PMC. Now, I'm not suggesting that BSG nerfs scavving. I think this is fine. So you do all this, you scav run, the more you do it, the better loot you spawn in with. But then it comes back to the topic. Slow progression. How are we slowing progression down via bosses when these two other major issues, major functions are in the game that rapidly accelerate the progression of the wipe? It makes no sense to me, guys. And I think you guys get exactly what I'm saying here. It makes a lot of sense. You've got these two alternatives that are just 5 times better than a single boss that you can kill, that you can do infinitely every single day, non-stop, compared to a 25-minute queue time looking for one boss for a quest. And this issue will persist 3 months into this wipe, 4 months into this wipe, until the devs are finally like, all right, guys, it's time to do events for Escape from Tarkov, because there's not many people playing. Here's a 50% spawn rate on Killer. By that time, it's already too late. Your player base is gone. People are waiting for the next wipe, and the only people left really playing the game are the true believers, whatever you want to call them, and the streamers. And what does it go back to? People like me complaining that the game's dead, other streamers the same, talking about the issues, and it just becomes a negative space every single wipe. Now, you know, there's a lot of other issues in Tarkov. But I do think this is one issue that is definitely kind of not spoken about enough. Solutions. What can they do to fix this? Leave Arena the way it is. I think it's fine. Leave Scav running the way it is. Maybe make it so you can't choose the map on your Scav before you've got max Scav Karma. You guys might flame me for that, but I think that's a fair balance, considering how broken Scav running is. But hey, that's a different video. Bosses. So, Hyperat had a good idea. You know, maybe use the figurines. You can put it in the Intel Center. And the next raid that you load, there's like a 20% increase for that boss to spawn. And that's for the entire server. And what would that do? I'm not saying this is my idea. I'm just giving you an example of someone else's. You put the figurine into the Intel Center. It gives a use to that item. Like, for example, the killer figurine, okay? If you guys didn't know, if you use the killer figurine in the cultist sacrifice thing, there's a chance that it gives you the killer helmet, which is really good. And that allows you to hand it in for the quest without having to kill killer. I did that for all my boss quests already. Really good change, by the way. Good job, BSG. It's really good. But you know what? Why not take that a step further, like Hyper said? Grab the figurine, throw it into your intel. I don't know, some sort of sacrifice, whatever you want to call it. The next raid that you load, there's a 20% increase to that boss that can spawn, and it affects the entire server, so everyone gets it. So it's a win-win for everyone. And what does that do to the item? It makes the item have more value. It makes the raids feel a bit more unique, and it adds a new dynamic to Tarkov raids, which I can see why Hyper suggested this. Now, I think it's a cool idea. Is it practical? Probably not. It would probably take a lot of time to develop something like that with matchmaking. That was just a cool idea of something that could be done to, make some unique interactions in the game and overall just increase the quality of Tarkov when it comes to playing raids. Now, my suggestion would be buff up the boss spawn rates every wipe and keep it at like 15%. Okay, 15% I think is fair at the start of a wipe. Maybe when we get first month into the wipe, bump it up to 20% or 25%. Then the second month, maybe put it at 30%. The third month, maybe 35, 40%. And then around that time, that's when you've already lost your players anyway. So if bosses are at a point where it's like you can see them every 3 raids or 4 raids, I think a lot of people, will be more understanding and deal with the long queue times, dealing with dying to cheaters because of the bosses having good stuff for quests, stuff like that. That's probably the simplest way to do it, but obviously, that's probably not going to happen. I thought of another good idea. This is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. And it could actually help Tarkov a lot. Every day, make one map have a boosted modifier for a certain boss. So, on Tuesday, Rashala spawns at a 35% spawn rate. And on Wednesday, Killer spawns at, a 40% spawn rate. And what we could do with that is, if it rotates every single day for different bosses, the devs could do something like, a community contribution to a boss, where all of the players in the game have got to contribute to something to boost up the spawn rate of a boss. That adds a massive, community effort to do something in the game, which I think would be really cool, because everyone needs those bosses. And what would that do for the game? Everyone would jump on the game to be excited, because, oh, dude, we got to get on. Bosses are 50% spawn rate in this map right now. That'd be a great time to go play the map. It would introduce a lot of people to come back to the game for when they need it for their quest. And it would just add a big dynamic for Tarkov raids. And it would be more of a community involvement, too. And, BSG could be like, okay, it's Thursday. We're going to make the goon spawn on shoreline at a 40%, and you can boost it up to 60% or something if you do this certain task as a community, like get, 100,000 scav headshots across the community within a certain time frame. I think you guys get the idea. I'm not, going into depth with this, but I think you get where I'm coming from. That is just an idea. In my opinion, they don't need to do that. Just make bosses reasonable. But hey, not a bad idea, I don't think. It could involve community interaction. It could be really fun for the game because it adds unique days to play Tarkov. Be like, oh, dude, it's Wednesday and we're, Gluhar's spawning higher percent rate. I'm gonna hop on real quick and go look for the boss. It can make that map super populated with PvP because the boss is a higher spawn rate. You get the idea. I don't really know the solution. These are just ideas. And I'm throwing out there. And I just wanted to give you guys a bit of perspective on how streamers are indirectly ruining the game. Not because we want to, because the developers look at the streamers of the game as the majority of people that play and are like, oh yeah, let's just nerf the hell out of it because streamers can progress in 2 weeks. The reality is, guys, streamers will always get past any barricade that you guys put up with time restrictions and low spawn rates. Why? Because we get to play all the time, every single day. The people that are actually the core of this community, which is the casuals in my opinion. I know people won't play the game and because it's too hard to swipe, but they are still the audience of people that keep this game going. The masses. Stop nerfing the game for those guys. You're using us as a tool to nerf stuff because we can progress fast. And the sad reality is the only person that gets affected by this is the masses, not us. We can just keep playing and go next. That's pretty much the premise of this entire video, and it makes more sense the more you think about it over the past few years with the changes that this game has had. But hey, listen, you guys might not agree with me or whatever I've said. That's completely fine. I don't really like making these type of videos because it does definitely upset a few people and people just see it as complaining. But I'm just trying to give a bit of perspective on this situation that's happened every single wipe in Tarkov. And it's always the same. Not just Glorious complaining. A lot of other streamers are complaining. Even people in my chat complaining about the same issue. And you can't really blame people, man. No one wants to waste an hour in matching to die to a cheater when the boss they've been looking for finally spawns. And that really is what it comes down to. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know if I'll make another video like this in the future. We'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this topic. I do think it's definitely something that is pretty true. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the Yap Fest or whatever. And I'll see you in the stream, live on every day, twitch.tv/Tigz. And yeah,